Good morning, friends, and welcome back to the Bring Your Big Energy podcast. I have Greer Cooper with me today. Hi, Greer.
Hello, nice to be here.
So happy to have you. And I'm going to do a little intro of you, and then we will just jump into the questions if you're here for it.
Sounds awesome.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so a little bit about Greer. So in 2010, while going through a really difficult divorce, Greer had such severe panic attacks that she was afraid to drive. So after years of searching for treatments, that didn't work, she developed a simple, proven process to end her own panic attacks naturally and permanently without medication and therapy. So now it is her calling. She loves to help other women heal panic attacks naturally so they can be calm, confident in the women that they were born to be. So Greer has been guiding women for more than 25 years to access their greatest peace, power, and purpose in live and online programs and retreats. Her work has appeared in Thrive Global, Conscious Dancer, and Education. And a fun fact about Greer is she left home at 14 actually to become a professional ballet dancer in New York City, where she learned how to handle high stress situations with grace and ease. So when she's not writing or teaching, she's out exploring nature and still dancing. So welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So let's start. I love to paint the picture for my listeners in what the catalyst or the intensity point, as I call it, that your perspective changed so much that it led you to the work that you were doing. So if we step back in time, a little time machine for you, Greer, and we look back at 2010, sorry, you were going through a divorce, you were experiencing these panic attacks, you were afraid to drive because of them, which I can completely see. So when was
Mhm.
the moment that you realized, "Oh my gosh, something has got to change. I cannot keep living this way."
Mm. Well, it happened actually one day when I was driving home after a client meeting. I was a single parent in the San Francisco Bay Area working as a wedding and portrait photographer. So I was kind of here, there, and everywhere all the time. Driving was my life. And I was on a freeway and I started to kind of feel this tingling sensation in my fingertips. And then the symptoms started to intensify. It started feeling tightness in my chest. It was hard to breathe. And then it got even more intense. I started to feel like I might pass out. And the scariest thing about it was, yes, I was on a freeway, but I was on a bridge that was 7 miles long with nowhere to pull over, no emergency lanes. So I have never been so terrified in my entire life. I still don't know how I got across that bridge. And I actually really thought I might die that day on the freeway. So I think when you have one of those moments where you're like, I might not live to see tomorrow, you realize that something's got to give.
You painted this picture for us, Greer. I can see myself in that, or I can see you rather in that moment on that bridge. And it's almost like it feels like claustrophobic. I can't
Mhm.
get out of this. Had you had these types of things happen before, or was this the first time it happened to you?
I had had them happen before. I had panic attacks moderately as a child after a traumatic event in my life. And, they kind of lasted for a little while, maybe like the better part of a year, and then they went away. And they resurfaced again decades later when I was in midlife. And at that point, they became more severe than ever. And so I had never really experienced anything to that degree as what I've just described. That was entirely new. And that was when I knew I really needed to dive in there and get to the bottom of what was going on so I could shift it.
What was happening to you internally that you feel like others could have maybe not seen in that period of your life?
Well, I think on the surface, I was somebody who had it all together, was doing all the things, had a very successful photography business, had a beautiful family, had a dog, had a nice home, all of those things. And yet, behind closed doors, you're suffering, you're not sleeping well, you're panicking, you're living in fear of the next panic attack, but it's all sort of an internal thing that's not so obvious on the outside. So while the outside looks pretty and Instagram worthy, the inside is a completely different story.
Absolutely. And I think so many people listening, even if they don't share your same, the panic attack thing, or even if they don't share like the journey I've went through. So with cancer, I think that everyone's kind of felt this moment before where they feel like everything looks great on the outside, and on the inside, they're sort of not living their truth. And it's not that we're trying to be manipulative. It's just like it's a self survival, like it's a self preservation or a survival instinct.
Right.
And I remember too, a lot of times when I was sick, I think it changed my entire relationship with my body because I felt
Mm.
like I had this body now that I didn't recognize and had failed me, and it really changed that for me. So how did you feel like these panic attacks changed your relationship with your body, or did they?
They definitely did because it no longer felt like a safe refuge. You know, instead, it was something that was working against me. I didn't feel like I could trust it because I never knew when the next panic attack was going to happen. So, in that way, it was kind of a constant living in fear, worrying about that. And also, I think for myself, and I believe this is true for a lot of women in midlife, there are other things at play because of perimenopause and menopause. And this can bring on a lot of health issues that we don't know how to deal with, and it's very difficult to get solutions and support. And that was definitely true for me as well.
It's so true. So many women at this stage were having these conversations. Oh, I have
Mhm.
chemo brain. My brain's completely gone. And my girlfriend's like, girl, I've never had chemo and I can't remember a damn thing. So it's and then you start to go, wait, is this a symptom of this, or is this a symptom, or do I have some like deadly crazy disease? And then your doctor's like, no, it's just actually called menopause. It's so crazy to me, all these things. Okay, so take us back. So you have this moment in this car. You eventually, obviously, make it through the moment. You pull
Mhm.
over. Then what does your journey of discovery and trying to find something to make your life more life giving to you? What did that journey look like for you?
Well, I think I started the same place where most people would start, which was a visit to my doctor. But he had no answers or solutions. He basically said, well, it could be a virus, so come back in a few weeks if you're not better. And I was thinking, that is so not helpful. I have to drive my child. I mean, I had a 2-hour commute just bringing my daughter to school every day, plus all the driving I did for work and all the other things. And so that just was not the right answer or an answer at all, really. And I think I just kept on exploring because what I really wanted to find was a holistic approach. I didn't want to get stuck on medication for the rest of my life. And also really wanted to understand what the root cause was. I didn't just want to mask the symptoms because in that way, then you're just dependent on a medication or whatever else for the rest of your life. So it became really important to me to discover that root cause because that was the linchpin of then being able to sort of untangle that knot, so to speak.
So, how do you know when you get to the root cause? That's such a great question because I think so many times our body's giving us signals, our mental health is giving us signals. So, how did you finally get to like, okay, this is what's actually going on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was definitely an in-depth process of exploration, and that's true for everybody because no two of us are alike, right? We all have grown up in different circumstances. We have different current life circumstances, different challenges, different gifts, all that. So no two of us are really alike. But there are a couple of things that are typically at play when people are having panic attacks. And the biggest one actually is the secret hidden root cause of panic attacks, which is a fried nervous system. And that was definitely true for me. And it's likely true for most women who are having panic attacks because basically everybody is so busy, and particularly in midlife, it's a time when you're doing all the things. You might be raising children and caring for aging parents. You might be working and running a household and paying the bills and getting food on the table and. It's a never-ending list. And so what that does is forces us to live in fight or flight. And that means the other side of our automatic nervous system, the rest and digest side, isn't working right. So our nervous system is completely out of balance. We're living in fight or flight. And that means that we're way more reactive to everything, even the smallest things. So, one of the keys to discovering the root cause is really learning how to heal and retrain your nervous system.
Okay. Okay. So, we're going to get into this healing. I put a pin in that because I'm so fascinated about the process that you end up building for yourself that then you build for everyone. which is very
Mhm.
purpose driven work, which we have that in common. So for you, nervous system, you said is a big indicator. Like that's a big, like, okay, this is a big driver. What are some of the other drivers?
Well, as I mentioned, it's very individual, but one of the other keys that I've seen with people is what's going on internally in your inner world. What does that look like? And most of us are so busy all the time that we can't really tune in and even understand what is going on. Because let's face it, panic attacks are happening on the inside. You could be having one and somebody sitting next to you might not even know unless you said something. So it becomes a process of learning to identify what your mental habits are. And a lot of us are living in perpetual thought loops of fear of the future, regrets or obsession about the past, things like that. So, really looking at what is going on in your inner world is one of the other big keys. And of course, there are other factors at play depending on the individual, but those are the two biggest.
Those are the two big issues. So the nervous system being fried, being out of alignment, and then in our internal world, what is showing up for us there. So how do you start to heal then?
Well, I teach a couple of different things, and one is a tool that people can actually start to use right now. I like to give action steps so people can come away with something
Please.
that will that will provide relief right now. So my top tool to do now is to set an alert on your phone 3 times a day. So morning, noon, and night. And when the alert goes off, just take a moment to sit, close your eyes, get quiet, breathe, slow your breathing, relax your body, and then ask yourself, what is my mind doing right now? What am I thinking about? That's the first question. Second question, is it helpful or harmful to me? And third question, what would I rather think about instead? And then I always recommend journaling because over time, you'll begin to notice there are repetitive patterns that reoccur. And it's actually interesting. A recent study showed that the average human being thinks about 60,000 thoughts per day, 80% negative, 95% repetitive from the day before. So that tells us that people get in habits. So until you learn how to retrain your mind properly and how to guide it away from the things that aren't helping, then we're kind of stuck in that loop.
It's so true. You said something earlier that made me think. You said something around obsession over past. I think this happens a lot and people can't let that go. And I talk a lot about this in the abandon portion of my spark process. But how
Mhm.
do you do that? Like, we've all done bad things. We've all made mistakes. We've all broken relationships. Life doesn't turn out exactly how we want it to turn out. Spoiler alert. And sometimes
Right,
so much grander than we ever thought, and both at the same time, right? So how
right.
do you heal that? How do you start to heal the regrets and the obsession and the negative thought processes?
Well, I think the process that I just shared is the beginning because what we're trying to do ultimately is to shine a light on what's happening here. Because when you can build awareness, then you can catch it when it starts rather than like getting caught in the loop and thinking the thing over and over and over and reliving it in your head over and over and over. So that's part of it. And the other part of it is, I know this word, it has been overused so many times that it's almost lost its meaning, but the word forgiveness. And that doesn't mean that you condone things that other people did or things that you did, but it's a process that you go through and release things because your peace of mind is more important than who was right. So that's one thing. And also, I think for me, and I'm sure it's true for a lot of other women, sometimes it's hardest of all to forgive ourselves. But if we can look at it as, reframing it as instead of making the other person wrong or making yourself wrong, realize everybody makes mistakes. Every single person who's living on the planet now has made mistakes. And guess what? You're going to make more. So
Yeah.
it doesn't do us any good to beat ourselves up about it. And it also doesn't do you or anybody else any good to live with the continued anger about things that happened because it's like drinking poison. a little by little by little by little, and the only person it hurts is you.
Mhm. I heard that quote one time. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. If
Yeah,
you are a grudge holder, and I was like, "Damn, that's good."
yeah.
I you said one of my favorite words as a coach, the word reframe. If
Mhm.
any of my clients are listening, shout out because you're probably laughing right now. But reframing is one of the biggest things that we do in coaching, and honestly, it's been one of the biggest gifts for myself, for my children, for me, my relationships. Talk to the audience a little bit about how you can make reframing work and how you get good at it.
Mm. Well, like anything, it takes practice, and at first, it's probably gonna feel really awkward, and you're gonna have to keep trying and trying because one of my teachers said that your mind is like a wild horse. And if you let it run wild, before you know it, it's off in the West 40 chomping on weeds. So that's us over there thinking all the things that are making us unhappy. So we have to sort of take back the reins, so to speak. And the way that you do that is by using the tool that I just provided, setting those alerts, being more and more aware of what's happening here so that you continue to build awareness. You shine the spotlight on it, and then you can say, wait a minute, I'm only hurting myself here. What's something I would rather think about? Because our minds are these amazing tools. They are actually our greatest tools, depending on how we use them. So we're either using them for creating all the incredible things in the world, like airplanes and computers and smartphones, or we're stuck in the corner, being holding a grudge about something. So it's your creative tool. Reframing means moving it from reactive, "Oh, I can't believe this person said that. I can't believe this thing happened," to, "Hey, what would I rather use my mental energy for instead? How can I pull it away from this thing that really isn't serving me and instead refocus it into what I want to create in life? Can I focus on my creativity? Can I focus on the things that bring me joy? Can I focus on the people that I love instead of this stupid thing that happened 20 years ago?"
Absolutely. And two of the reframes that I use, that I love, love, love is, what else could be true? Like, what else
Mm.
could she hates me. I think she hates me. I think she hates me. And you get in your mind, oh, she hates me. My boss hates me. And then you're like, wait, what else could be true? Maybe she just missed a bad life, right? Like maybe her husband and her are not getting along, or maybe, she didn't get the promotion she wanted. So what else could be true? And then also I love, and again, this is overused, but I think it's so true is how is this for me? Like,
Mhm,
and that's again, when people turn their pain into purpose, like you've done,
mhm,
you have to kind of say, like, how is this for me? Why am I uniquely positioned to be the person that goes out and does this? Because honestly, we can just rebuild ourselves and then just move on, get a day job, whatever. But I think so many of us that fall into this bucket of passion driven work is because we really feel like we wish we would have had someone like ourselves when we were going through this, and we feel actually so take us back. So I know we've talked about a little bit about some of the drivers, and we've talked about a little bit of healing. But take us back to your story again, as much as you're comfortable, because I think it's really important for people. People want to hear the wait. Then what did she really do? Right?
right,
People are very hungry for that. That's how our mind works, right? So what else did you do that starts leading you up, and then we'll get into the work that you do now for people.
okay. Well, I first of all had to stop believing there was something wrong with me. I truly believe that panic attacks aren't a sign of weakness. They are actually a sign of strength, and what they mean is that you've been holding too much for too long. So, as I said, it was really important to me to get down to the root cause. And one of the biggest turning points for me was doing something I actually never thought I would do. And I had kept putting off for years and making all the excuses about why I couldn't and didn't want to spend the money on. I signed up for a week-long silent retreat at a meditation center in the Bay Area because it became a point where I realized I had to prioritize self-care and I had to learn how to rebalance my inner world. And setting aside that chunk of time was, I decided the time and place where I was going to learn to do that. And that was really when things started to shift for me because by setting aside that time and, really diving into my inner world on a regular basis every day for an entire week, I began to have all these insights about what was keeping me stuck what I could do differently, and some of the tools that I had already learned in my past that I could utilize to help me heal.
How did you know that was going to help be the catalyst for your work? Like, how did that idea come to you?
I think the idea came to me the same way any idea comes to you. I mean, I call it my daughter and I call it the small quiet voice within. Other people call it a divine download, but you get that inner prompting of like this is what needs to happen. And it's the strong, certain and steady voice. Like if you had the world's best grandmother, for instance, giving you advice, the wisest, best grandmother. It's kind of like that's the voice saying, this is what needs to happen. And so that's the voice to listen to.
So you show up at this silent retreat. Had you done one
Mhm.
of those before?
No, I mean, I had done day-long workshops and things like that, but I had never ever done a silent retreat. Honestly, I didn't know if I could be silent for an entire week, but it was one of the best things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, I did a retreat and we had just the silent breakfast, and I was like, "This is gonna go out of mind here." And then about the middle of the week, I was like, "This is amazing." So did you need to decide, and again, I like to get real tactical, so forgive me, but I think it's interesting to the listeners. How did you decide how you would use that time then, or did they actually take you through a process of, like, what you needed to be doing for portions of days and things of that nature?
This was a very structured program because it actually is in an ashram environment, so they have a daily schedule and you just kind of dive into the daily schedule, and then they had teachings every day and workshops and, meditation, yoga, all of that sort of thing. Of course, there was also time for self-exploration, going for a walk, things like that. But yes, it was structured, but it wasn't structured in a way to help with panic attacks specifically. It was just the program that I decided was the right one for me.
Okay. So you come out of the silent retreat. So for you, how long do you think the process ends up taking you? So where you start with this moment on this bridge, you work through the silent retreat, and it's
Mhm,
hard to remember, I'm sure too. But like, how
mhm.
long was that kind of arc for you until you started feeling like, wow, I really feel like I'm finding versions of myself that I love again, and that I can feel strong in.
I would say within the first few months of doing the retreat, things were shifting. I had all these insights. I realized I had to stop pushing myself 24/7. I had to stop believing I had to hold and control everything. I had to stop living in fight or flight and treating everything as an emergency. And most importantly, I had to stop worrying because that is a mental habit that doesn't solve anything and only causes further distress. So, I had to really get clear about patterns that were going on so that I could shift them. And once I started to shift them, things really changed quickly. I started sleeping better. I started feeling better. I started having more energy. I started feeling more confident again. I started doing more things. And of course, I stopped having panic attacks.
How does one my grandpa used to say, "Worrying is like a rocking chair, it just goes back and forth, but it doesn't do you there."
Exactly.
How to stop worrying? What works for us?
What works for us? Well, retraining your mind, guiding it elsewhere, realizing, first of all, that worry is basically praying for what you don't want and understanding that it doesn't help anything and it only hurts you. Having that awareness, I actually use a mantra, which is a sacred phrase that helps me. It's just a tool to give your mind something else to do because our minds are busy. That's the nature of the mind. Most listeners have probably heard the mind likened to a monkey. It's jumping on this branch, this branch, this branch, this branch, this branch. And, even when you're trying to sleep, it's still doing things. So we have to give the mind something else to do. And so, as I said, the tool that I use is mantra. One of
Okay.
my favorites is Om Shanti, and Shanti is the Sanskrit word for peace. So repeating that anytime you notice your mind starting to spin out is going to give it something else to do.
A refocusing, kind of like a redistribution. Okay. So you go through this healing process and it sounds beautiful as it starts working itself through. Were there
Mhm.
any like kind of trip ups along the way where you're like, I don't know if this is going to work or what am I doing? Or were there places that you had self doubt? And if so, how did you work through those?
You know, I think all the self-doubt led up to the panic attacks, frankly. And once I discovered my root cause and knew exactly what to do anytime symptoms started to arise, that changed everything. The self-doubt was gone because I knew I had a protocol that worked. So panic attacks were no longer going to hijack my life. And when you have that, then you've reclaimed your power, you've reclaimed your joy, your enthusiasm for life, and you get to live your bigger life.
That I love that. So I talk a lot about purpose, and I know that you're very purpose driven yourself. When did you start to go like, okay, I really did some deep work on myself here, and I feel like I got some pretty good solutions, but I think my purpose is to help other people. What did
Mm.
that process look like for you?
Well, that was a little bit more of an evolution, I would say. A lot of this new work started to arise for me during the COVID years because obviously life changed. A lot of things shut down. Photography was not happening. My father was dying. So we made some very big shifts in life. I ended up leaving California and actually living in Costa Rica for a couple of years. And it was at that point that I started to feel called to offer things to help support other women. So that looked like women's circles there, that looked like some online events, really just because I believe that it's our duty, our dharma to help other people who are suffering if we have the knowledge and the ability to do so.
Love that. It's called Dharma.
Mhm.
So beautiful. You're right, because it is. Again, I always talk about uniquely prepared, but you're right. It's an honor to be able to serve others, but it's just like, it's kind of like this, it feels like a necessity, almost like I need to do this, right? Like it's, people say calling, and I know it sounds cheesy, but it does. It feels like you're a little bit like you're called to do it. So is this what you do full time now? Is it like, what does your world look like now?
Yes, this is what I do full time. I teach, I write, I lead events, and I really love it.
Okay. So another thing that as we start to build and we rebuild, I firmly believe like we're never the same version of ourselves, but we're a
Mm,
better version in different ways. But sometimes we have to let things go. We need to abandon things. And that's, I think, one of the steps that a lot of people struggle with. In my process specifically, is I ask people to leave things on the cutting room floor. And it's very
mm.
uncomfortable for people. I mean, I remember when I was writing my book, they're like, here's the number of words that you need to take out. And I was like, what? I love those words. So it's really hard to like kill your darlings, which is what like Stephen King calls that. But what did you need to abandon to be able to do this work?
To do this work, I think I had to abandon the idea that I didn't have the 50 degrees that some people have. I had to abandon the idea that, maybe I wasn't ready. Certainly all of the other things that I already talked about. But I think really our darkest moments can be our greatest teachers. And so allowing those darkest moments and really looking inside at how it changed me and how much more fulfilled I became because I went through that process. You know, realizing that the tools that I teach in my panic free formula don't just heal panic attacks, they actually help me and other people to be calm and centered no matter what's happening in life. Because let's face it, as you said, life continually surprises us. It's going to throw us some waves. And when you have the right tools, then you're not pulled under or drowned with every wave that comes by. You're able to just sort of ride on top of them instead and accept them and deal with them with ease and grace. So, that can even look like I have a one client, for instance, who has turned around and taught all of her techniques to her daughter who has been having some panic symptoms, her husband who has been having some panic symptoms, and she herself works with elderly people. And so when you can show up as a calm, centered, confident person, the person you're actually meant to be, that's why we're here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you said, your panic-free formula. Can you share part of that with us, or as much as you're comfortable to give us a little taste of what that is?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have sort of broken everything that we've talked about today into steps. So, first step obviously is to discover the root cause of your panic attacks. And that happens with an in depth assessment. And then we create a customized formula for exactly what we'll do to help you get through and come out on the other side. The second step is learning the protocol to walk a panic attack back when it starts so that you're able to stop it in its tracks and then they no longer are hijacking your life. And the third step is to empower yourself with tools like I've already described here today so that you can be calm and centered no matter what's going on in your life. And you can use these tools anytime, anywhere. One of the most powerful ones that I teach helps people to reset to calm within minutes. And that can work even for situations like you're really angry with somebody or or maybe you're having trouble sleeping at night, you know? So there are many different applications. And then the final stage is obviously when you put all these things in place, you get this burst of energy and confidence and enthusiasm and you really thrive.
I love that. It sounds like I'm feeling myself calm just walking through the process with you. You also said something around like getting people to back to where they're centered and calm and confidence
Mhm,
and have confidence.
mhm.
Even if they don't have panic attacks. And so how do you feel like this transfers to, because not everyone's gonna listen that's gonna be listening is gonna have panic attacks. And that's why I love having so many different voices, because I wanna share lived experience from all of you guests in what we're walking through and what we're building for. But I really
Mhm.
always like to try to find that nugget too that transfers across like, okay, I'm listening and I'm getting it, but I don't really know that first of all, I don't know if I'm really having panic attacks, or if I'm not, what can I get from today?
Right. Well, even if you're not having panic attacks, it's highly likely that you worry more often than you would like to. Or perhaps your mind does some of the things that we've already talked about. So your mind is doing unhelpful things. So having the right tool to guide your mind, to give it something else to do is going to be invaluable to you. And honestly, I think at this point in time, anxiety in the US in particular is highest rate ever. So you may not be having panic attacks, but you probably are having anxiety. It might not be to the point where it's preventing you from, functioning in the world, but it probably is holding you back from being the best version of yourself. So having the tools to be able to unwind anxiety, to learn how to be calm and peaceful no matter what's going on, that's applicable to anybody.
Absolutely. What to you is what is the difference and or relationship with panic attacks and anxiety for you?
I'm glad you asked that question. Yeah, I came up with the analogy that I think works best. So, anxiety is a slow burn. Panic attacks are a detonation. It's like a bomb going off.
What does it feel like in your body for those who haven't had them that are like, I don't know, am I having something like this or not?
Mhm.
What does it feel like for yourself or for people you've worked with?
Well, I mean, it can look a few different ways, but some common symptoms are it might start with tingling, pins and needles feelings in your extremities, racing heartbeat, tight chest, difficulty breathing, feeling like you might pass out, feeling dizzy, feeling disoriented, and of course, feeling panicked. So, actually, sometimes people don't even know that they're having a panic attack. They might think that they're having a heart attack. So a lot of women end up going to the ER and then they're informed. Or sometimes it's a more mild panic attack. So it sort of happens and people wonder what's happening and they're frightened, but then it passes and they're like, I don't know what just happened to me. Maybe it was a panic attack, maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so I have heard of people that go to the ER that have had that.
Mhm,
You're so thankful. You're like, "Thank
mhm.
God it's not my heart," but then you're sort of like, "Oh, wait, but now this is the thing that's showing up for me." So I think, how do I manage that? You talked about healing, you talked about your beautiful panic-free formula. And,
Mhm.
uh, um, I talk a lot about kinetic energy, which is like momentum and sustainability for the life changes, the transformations that we make. How do you
Right.
think about, the sustainability of if people are doing this work, they're doing this work with you, how do you create that notion of like keeping that momentum, keeping that sustainability? Is your advice there?
Yeah, well, I would say that there are 2 key factors that help women to sustain calm through challenges and things like that in the long term. And f I would say the first is having the right tools in your back pocket so that you have those as a touchstone that you can return to anytime you start to feel off. For me, one of the biggest things that that looks like is starting my day gently and in silence and using meditation, but also knowing what to do if things run off the rails. And then the second thing is remembering that you are in charge of your inner world. So when hard things arise, you get to decide how you're going to react, or sometimes even if you're going to react. And the last thing is prioritizing self-care. That's one of the most important ways to maintain balance, and for a lot of women, that's the thing that gets pushed down to the bottom of the to-do list over and over. Yeah, learning to make your inner world a beautiful sanctuary is the most important thing of all.
I love this like notion of an inner world. I've never thought about it that way. It's like such a rich concept, which I love. And I think self-care, it's kind of a bad rap. It's like, "Oh, I'm at the spa," or like, "Oh, I had to get my this done," which is like, oh, I'm here for all of that, totally here for all of that, but, like, what do you tell people that are afraid to do it? Because, number 1, people we become martyrs too, like, "I
Mhm.
certainly couldn't, I don't have
Right.
time to meditate," or whatever. You can
Right.
always find time for something that's important to you and life-giving, so
Exactly.
yeah, so what do you think about self-care when people think it's a naughty word?
Well, a lot of people have been having this same conversation, and yes, sometimes self-care gets a bad rap because if it becomes an all-consuming thing, well, yeah, of course. I would say, first of all, remember that self-care isn't selfish, it's vital, because if your cup isn't full, then how are you going to be able to help other people? If you're coasting on fumes and freaking out over the slightest thing, how much help can you be? Self-care doesn't have to be this huge, big thing, but it does have to be something that you do consistently because you can't live in fight or flight 24/7. It's just simply not sustainable. And unfortunately, at this point in time, it seems as though busyness has sort of become a cultural norm and we're almost rewarded for staying busy. You know, you ask somebody on the street, "Hey, how are you?" "Oh, I'm so busy." Like, that's something to aspire to. But is it really? And if you're busy, are these things like, how are these things contributing to your life? Because if you don't take some time to rest and replenish, then eventually you're going to burn out. That's just a given. So I suggest that people just start even with scheduling in a few times a week, even just 5 minutes. It can look like lying in bed with your eyes closed and an eye pillow and deep breathing. It can look like walking barefoot in the grass. It can look like playing with your kids or your dog. Whatever it is, this is vital, not selfish.
I love it. It's almost like I've heard it before is like the oxygen mask, to put your
Mhm.
your own oxygen mask on before you else is on. If the listeners understand that that's a real real word. Had a lot of people on the show, that hasn't been released yet, but they've done like burnout recovery and things of that nature,
Mhm.
as well. And clearly, there's an entire group of people who are doing this to help people because it is such a hard thing, and we don't see the signs coming, and
Right.
we don't listen to them, and then we're so far into it, we're kind of like stuck in this burnout, and then it's even harder to recover. I guess I would say because you're so kind of tore down to the studs versus like if you listen more often, you have this habit or you create this ritual of this self discovery of some of these like 5-minute moments. I guess you could publish a great like 5-minute moments. Like that would be
Mhm.
great distinct insight on how to do it. Actually, that's That is one question I have for you is, so if someone's listening right now and they feel trapped by panic or anxiety, what is one small but super powerful shift that they can make today to begin rebuilding trust with their own?
Yeah. Well, I would say that the biggest mistake that most people make when they're having a panic attack is they stop breathing normally. And this can look a couple different ways. This can either look like really tight, shallow breathing, so you're not getting enough oxygen, or it can be hyperventilating, so then you're getting too much oxygen. But either way, both of those things send an emergency message to your nervous system, which then kicks in the adrenaline and all the things, and then the anxiety spirals. So, one of the most powerful tools that we have at our disposal is something available to us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that is your breath. So, one of the first breathing techniques that I teach, it's actually the first step of the protocol that I teach to walk panic attacks back, is what I call the 4-6 breathing ratio. So this looks like inhaling for a count of 4 and exhaling for a count of 6. So maybe we could try a few rounds together for a minute. So I just,
Here for it.
yeah, I invite everybody to just close your eyes, relax your body, and feel your sitting bones on the surface below you. Feel the crown of your head reaching towards the sky. And just scan your body with your awareness, noticing any areas that feel tight, and give yourself permission to just really relax those areas. Relax your shoulders, relax your jaw, relax your face. Take a deep breath in and sigh it out. And then we'll work on the breath together. So you'll inhale for a count of 4, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Last one. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. And exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just keeping the eyes closed for a moment, just letting the breath be slow and steady, and just noticing how you feel, even with just a few rounds of extended conscious breathing. And then on the next inhale, you can go ahead and open your eyes.
I
So
feel very relaxed.
I'm so glad. And the reason this works is twofold. I mean, first of all, you're bringing in more oxygen to the body, but the longer exhale actually sends a calming message to your nervous system. It stimulates the vagus nerve, and that is associated with the rest and digest side of your nervous system. So that long exhale does that in your nervous system. It slows the heart rate, it relaxes the muscles, all the good things. And it also gives that anxious mind something else to focus on because you're counting, you're breathing, all your attention should be focused on the breath.
So I've always wondered why the outward was a little longer than the inward. And so it's that fits.
Hmm.
That's it. That ties.
Hmm.
This has been amazing. Where can people find out more about you or connect with you and all the things, all the places? I'll put it in the show notes as well. But
Okay.
just for the audience, where can they find out more?
Sure, yes. Well, the best way, of course, is to visit me at the panicfreeformula.com. And I have some special resources there if people want to dive more deeply into what we talked about today. I am also on Facebook and Instagram, so love to connect with you however.
And Facebook, Instagram, are you under your name? Or are you under Panic Free Formula as well?
Under my name on both, yes.
Perfect. Okay, Greer Cooper. Okay, perfect. I'll put that in the show notes. Thank you for sharing your story and thank you for your work and your wisdom and everything grounded in such honesty. Your journey has been such a powerful reminder that when we really listen to our bodies and get really intentional with our energy and our breathing, that real transformation is possible. So thank you a million times over for being on the show today.
Of course, it's been my pleasure. Thank you, Stacy.